Hello, today I will be presenting my critique on children's classroom peer relationships and subsequent educational outcomes by Susan Rissy, Rebecca Gardenstein, and Janet Kissinger. I chose this article because I feel peer relationships could be a big influence on our development and educational outcomes, just like other environmental factors and influences. Authors' major points and ideas of the article: not graduating high school is an individual problem as well as a social problem that will later affect their economic, social, and personal health. Previous studies mainly address family factors and academic performance in predicting educational outcomes. This study aims to specifically look at peer relationships. Authors asked, what specific aspects of peer relationships are uniquely predictive of educational outcomes, and what, if any, factors moderate the association between peer relationships and later outcomes? The main goal of the study is to determine factors related to peer relationships and peer interactions and measure how these factors can be predictors of educational outcomes. Data was collected through several methods. First, there was a social preference nominations, where each student selected 3 of the same-sex classmates that they liked most and 3 of the same-sex classmates that they liked least. The number of most liked and least liked were divided by the total number of potential nominations. Pupil Evaluation Inventory is a 35-item peer nomination test that measures and scores aggression. Comprehensive Assessment Program tests academic performance pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. Over age is a cutoff set 12 months above median age. Median age was determined for each grade level. 3rd grade was 8 years and 6 months old. 4th grade was 9 years and 6 months old. And 5th grade was 10 years and 6 months old. Classroom majority and minority status was determined if the student's ethnicity fit in the top 65% of the population of the class. School socioeconomic standard was determined by the student's eligibility for free or reduced meals, and educational outcomes were categorized in 3 different categories: graduates, dropouts, and continuers obtained through school records. As for participants, this is a 10-year follow-up of 524 children, 277 of them boys and 247 girls, 170 in 3rd grade, 288 in 4th grade, and 126 in 5th grade. Children belonged to both schools from both low and middle socioeconomic status. By the 10-year follow-up, 315 children attended middle socioeconomic status schools and 209 attended low socioeconomic status schools. Ethnicity was the main distinction from the original participants to the follow-up participants. This is because 188 students of the 524 moved either to private or non-public schools where we could no longer obtain their information or records. 136 were Caucasian students that moved, and only 76 were African Americans that moved, leaving a more even number of Caucasian and African Americans in the study. As for the procedure, tests were performed in the children's classrooms. Research assistants helped ensure the privacy of the children, and fun activities followed the tests to direct attention away from discussing any of the questions or answers between the students. Educational outcomes were collected through participant school records, as I mentioned earlier. Main results of the study: aggression is a leading determinant of educational outcomes. Social performance scores can predict Caucasian educational outcomes, but not clearly predict the same for African American educational outcomes. Graduation and continued education are determined mostly by academic achievement scores, ethnicity, and withdrawn interaction, as the study concludes. So how does this tie into what we've been learning? Well, Urey's theory of human development I think peer relationships would be a part of the microsystem. This study aims to understand the relationship of peer interaction and how these relationships can affect other systems of the student or child. Like the mesosystem, how friends in school can affect the student's development. The study takes into consideration the exosystem and macrosystems of students, but focuses on the first two systems, the micro and mesosystem. Another area that we have looked at is comparing children and students of low and high socioeconomic status, and we have learned that often students that come from a lower socioeconomic status have poor nutrition, are exposed to more pollutants, but most importantly have less exposure to essential school materials and less parent involvement, and less qualified teachers, with a higher turnover rate in educators. We have learned how important peer context is to our development. Peer selection process, when a child befriends other individuals that are similar to themselves, and the peer socialization process, when children that are not alike become more alike one another over time. They're spending more time with each other, and students are often categorized as popular, rejected, or neglected. And peer relationships, children with positive friendships typically have better social competence, more self-confidence, higher self-esteem, and less difficulties in making life transitions, which is just a clear example of how important peer relationships are and how important they can be to our development as we grow from a young age and later. More that we have learned about are cultural factors. Cultural value education can play a role in a child's academic performance. An example of our textbook states that an African American student states that their parents have high expectations for them, but their parents' expectations are not as high as the expectations of Caucasian parents set for their children. Typically, Caucasian parents are more involved in school functions as well as their children's education by helping them with homework or reading than typically African American parents are. No matter the situation, an educator should always encourage the importance of education, no matter the student's race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status.